So you're playing Genshin, you do a 10 pull, and while you don't get a 5-star, you do get an honorary 5-star Gaming. Now, what do you get with Gaming? Besides a plunge character, I believe he was the second plunge character, actually, not including Xinyun, who allows everybody to be a plunge character, but the second character with dedicated plunge damage. Well, Gaming is a Claymore-wielding Pyro user, and in this video, we are going to look at the basics of Gaming. Now, Gaming's kit is relatively simple, and that's one of the reasons why Gaming is so good as an on-field damage dealer. So first we're going to look at his normal attacks. So his normal attacks are going to be normal. He's going to do physical damage. He is going to have this really cool animation where he kind of jumps up on this pedestal, does a front flip off of it, hitting a couple of enemies. It does have a little bit of an AoE. And then his charge attack is the Beyblade version. For his skill, if we tap a skill, he is going to lunge forward, scaring the enemy with his lion costume. And that is it. That's all he does. Unless you hit an enemy. If you hit an enemy whenever he lunges forward, it is going to send Gaming up into the air. If you follow this up with a normal attack, he is then going to plunge on the enemy, doing pyro damage. You have to make sure that you hit an enemy or a wall. If you don't hit an object or an enemy, whenever you do that lunge forward, you will not be sent up into the air. So you need to make sure that you are hitting an object, a wall, an enemy, so that way you can then get set up into the air, followed up by a normal attack to then plunge down, dealing that pyro damage. Now, this is going to be his main source of damage, and his burst works beautifully with this skill. What his burst is going to do is that his burst is going to do an initial instance of pyro damage. It's going to do a lot in an AoE, but then his little friend is going to run up to Gaming. You can then use his skill again to go up in the air and do a plunge attack, but whenever this friend meets back up with Gaming, it is going to reset the skill cooldown, allowing you to do multiple instances of plunge damage to this. This plunge damage is also always pyro converted, not infused, converted. So that way it is always going to do pyro damage. Now, a lot of times you do run him with Benny, and the C6 Benny is not going to matter. He's going to love the C6 Benny. It's not going to change anything having C6 Benny versus C5 Benny. Giving him the infusion is not going to be a bad thing. So if we use his skill, he is going to lose a set amount of HP. If we look at his first passive, after the plunging attack hits an opponent, he will regain 1.5% of his max HP every 0.2 seconds for 0.8 seconds. So this is going to give him 4 instances of healing, giving him back 6% of his HP. Now, this is not going to make up for the amount of HP that you lost during his skill. If we look at his second passive, when Gaming has less than 50% of his HP, he will receive a 20% income healing bonus. So that means that if he goes below 50, then that skill is going to increase the amount of healing that you get. When Gaming has 50% HP or more, plunging attack damage will do more. It will do 20% more. Now, whenever we use his burst, that first instance of pyro damage is also going to give Gaming a set amount of healing, and it should be enough to take you back to full. The problem is that whenever you start using his skill over and over again, you are going to be draining so much of Gaming's HP. However, this does allow Gaming to make use of Marshmallow Hunter on his own with that fluctuating HP without the use of Farina, but it's very difficult to keep his HP high enough to get this 20% extra plunging damage from the passive unless you have his C1. His C1 is that during his burst, whenever his little friend meets back up with him, he is going to heal 15% of his HP. So you're going to lose health and then gain it right back up, and then lose health and then gain it right back up, and then lose health and then gain it right back up. And again, most of the time you're running him with Benny. So even below C1, even at C0, if you're running him with Benny, you can kind of help mitigate that damage that you're going to be doing to yourself during his skill. But this C1 just makes it even better, and it 100% allows you to trigger Marshmallow Hunter on his own to a full efficiency. Now, since we're here, let's go ahead and look at the rest of his constellations. Number 2 is going to be that whenever he receives healing, and it's an overflow healing, meaning he's already at full HP and he just heals even more, his attack is going to be increased again. Again, with C1, it's not too difficult to do that, especially when you add in like Benny's healing and then Cloud Retainer's healing if you're running him with Cloud Retainer. Number 3 is going to be a normal one. It's going to increase the level of his skill. Number 4, when the plunging attacks from his skill hits an opponent, it's going to restore some energy to Gaming. This just allows him to use his burst more often, lowering his ER requirements. Number 6 is going to increase the crit rate and crit damage of the skill plunging attack, which again is what we're doing over and over during his burst, and its radius is increased. This is crazy. It means that you can do less into crit rate, more into crit damage. I believe once you get a C6, you can also start to run something like a different artifact set than Marshmallow Hunter, which we're going to talk about. Speaking of artifact sets, his best is probably going to be Marshmallow Hunter because you get that crit rate increase whenever his HP increases or decreases, which again, he can trigger all on his own. You don't have to run him with Farina. For the main stats, you are going to be looking at an attack or EM Sands, depending on what you need, depending on the team that you're running him in, a Pyro Goblet, and then a crit rate or crit damage circlet, most likely a crit damage circlet. Some other options are going to be something like Crimson, which again, at C6, this is that artifact set that's going to become a lot more viable. It's going to start to look a lot better once you have C6 because you get the 20% crit rate from his C6, and you don't necessarily need that from Marshmallow Hunter. If you're going to be running him in something like a Burgeon team, you're going to have like Flowers of Paradise Lost or Gilded. I believe that Gilded can even work in something like a regular team, running him with regular stats. For weapons, I believe his best, or one of his best, is going to be Serpent Spine. This is a 4-star Battle Pass weapon, so you can get this if you're willing to swipe, but if you're not, don't worry because he has a ton of other options for good weapons. Funny enough, Beacon is actually going to be one of his best weapons because it's going to give him a lot more crit rate than Serpent Spine, and then it's also going to be able to give him double attack buffs whenever he uses his skill, whenever he takes damage, which he does that to himself. The HP at the bottom isn't big. It's mainly going to be that crit rate and those double attack stats. Actually, Beacon's really good on a lot of different characters. Another 4-star option that you're going to have is going to be something like Rain Slasher, which is going to be really, really good, especially in a Vape team. I would say Vape over Melt because you're going to get that damage increase if they're affected by Electro or Hydro, not Cryo, so Rain Slasher is going to be really good, but he can also use Elemental Mastery in those Vape teams. For something that's going to be like a free-to-play, you do have something like Tidal Shadow, which is going to be really good. This is the Fontaine Craftable Sword, and this is just whenever he heals, he's going to get extra attack, which he can heal himself, so that's really good. Or you have the Melazine Cardboard Sword to give him more energy and an attack buff as well. I believe that he can even use the Sumeru craftable weapon for certain teams as well, giving him energy recharge and EM for like vapes or melts. And then of course, if you have lost a 50-50, then you do have something like D-Luke's signature weapon, which is going to be Wolf's Gravestone. There's a lot of weapons that are really, really good for Gaming. Some being like Red Horns, Verdict, 1,000 Blazing Suns. You have a lot. You can even use Skyward Pride, the Unforged. You can use a lot of different weapons on him. Now, Gaming is one of those characters that even at C0, he is still a very, very good free-to-play option for a main on-field damage dealer, especially because you can run him with like Xingqiu, you can run him with Benny, you can run him with a lot of different things. You can, in this particular team that I'm using, you can take out Shin Yun, you can throw in Sucrose to give an EM buff, you can use Kazuha, you can take out Setlali, you can throw in Xingqiu to get vapes, you can do a lot with Gaming in a very, very free-to-play friendly team. This, I believe, currently that I'm using in this team is his premier team, allowing him to get melts. Now, this is going to be it for this video. Kuki has green hair. I have green hair in this model, and I'll see you in the next one.